going on, everybody? John Matrix here. Hope you're all having yourselves a wonderful day wherever you're at, whenever you're watching this. We're going to be jumping into part 4 of Black Adytum here today as we continue on towards the finish line for Red Tape here. Links will be down below in the description, as always, to the original video without my commentary and reaction, and to the Exploring Series channel. Please do me a favor, if you enjoy this video as we go through it, be sure to go over to the Exploring Series channel and give this original video a like, and check out his content. If you haven't subbed to him already, he makes a lot of great content for the SCP universe, as well as others, 40k, etc. So yeah, check out his stuff. You know, give the man some love, hit that sub button, check out any kind of membership stuff he's got, sponsors, Patreon, all that, if you want to take your support for his channel to the next level. The last episode where we left off was pretty intriguing, with the idea that, you know, Adytum purposely, you know, betrayed her people and was the reason Black Adytum fell. The question is, was it a situation where, you know, she saw the future coming, she saw the Black Star coming, and saw the Black Star was going to annihilate the Mechans, the Davites, and Black Adytum? So the question is, you know, did she do it purposefully in order to scatter her people so that they would survive and prepare for the future, or is there something else going on? It also seemed like there may have been a situation where she was trying to, you know, consume as much as Yaldabaoth as possible in order to, you know, power up to be able to combat the Black Star. But who knows? I guess we'll find out more in today's episode of Dragon Ball Z. I guess in this one we're going to see her meet the final Clavigar, and I'm curious to see what's going to happen with this, and then the last 2 episodes, what's going to happen. You know, is Adytum going to gain her full power back? Is the original Adytum, once that happens, going to take over the body of the present day Adytum, the resurrected Adytum, I guess you want to call her that? And yeah, I'm just curious to see how all this stuff is going to come together. So yeah, let's just jump into it here. Again, this is going to be part 4 of SCP-001 Black Adytum.
SCP-001 Black Adytum, Part 4. So far, Grand Karcist Adytum and the Black Adytum Initiative have encountered 3 of her 4 Clavigars, which have had drastically different reactions to Adytum's return and memory loss. She has already been through quite an ordeal of emotions along the path, as new revelations shake everything she thought she knew about who she is, and she has taken to confiding much in an artificial construct. Now, there's only one Clavigar to go,
which is also
before
very
the time
strange.
will come to seek out Black Adytum itself.
I still feel like there's more going on with, was it Xenon or whatever? I'm terrible with names. Xenophon, something like that. But I still feel like there's more going on with the 0502 council member who initially sent the sentient AI out there to communicate with her. And obviously she's able to see the future, you know, so I feel like she saw this being coming, and I don't know, is playing things out. I just feel like there's more going on with their relationship, because it's just odd that the Sarkics, with their aversion to technology and xenophobia and isolationism, would suddenly, you know, because this sentient AI shows up, that they would open up to the Foundation. If anything, you would think the opposite would happen. So
let's continue. We pick up where we left off with Chapter 4, The Vault of Lovitar, and are given the second truth of Adytum, which reads, "Temptation does not make itself known. Temptation clothes itself in the skin of good intention, beckoning those most faithful, guiding them forward.
road
The
to hell's paved
tempted
with good
do
intentions."
not realize they are aflame until the fires eat through their flesh. You must be wary for it, always. We're then also given another excerpt from the Records of Adytum, which reads, "And as the Nalka raged for 5 days against the old masters, rousting them from the city until the canals of the nameless city ran rich with blood. Adytum, the scarred prophet, knelt in the deepest tunnels of Adytum before the flesh of the fell god, the same god that he had supped from and whose blood filled his veins now. It was vast. Tendrils stretched all across the city, reaching desperately out to where the slaves had unearthed it from its tomb. Far beneath the earth, far removed from the sounds of battle, the Devourer spoke to Adytum. This is not a city. You see this now, in the tunnels and in the carvings. This place was never meant for the living to inhabit. This is a tomb, a mausoleum, meant to hold me. The Scarlet is a jealous god, and he has instructed his children to bind me here, far from the eyes of the living. They fear me. They fear you, too. The wall poured with its lifeblood, with its power. Adytum held only a torch, casting a flickering glow on the vast beast. You have found me here, where they seek to seal me away. You sense my power, as I sensed yours. Feed me, as I have fed you. Become as one. Your masters will bow to you. All will bow. Your people will become unstoppable, with you at their head, their shepherd, their lord. The beast reached out to the slave, offering him a tendril. I see the fear inside you, terror of death, of what will happen to your fledgling nation on your death. I bring immortality as my prophet. Adytum saw the strength of the flesh. He looked into the fires of the torch, and he saw the future. Him at the head of a vast holocaust, undying, his clavigars at his side, obedient to the wishes of his master. He rose, grasping the tendril. He felt the blood slipping between his fingers. I have been enslaved once. I will not become one again.
Okay, I'm pausing it right there before he goes on, because like that's a pretty big reveal, right? Like their conversation, because it's like then that would have been an even greater betrayal, right? Like if Adytum had essentially cursed them to be the slaves of Yaldabaoth without anyone knowing about it, right? That would be another big betrayal, another sin. So, but now it sounds like Adytum's about to retort and say, I've been a slave and I'm not going to. And so he's going to consume of the flesh and just take the power for himself.
He raised his knife and cut through the tendril, leaving it wriggling. The Devourer screeched. I will bind you here, hold you as the masters held you. You will not make us your slaves. And Adytum cast the torch into the flesh, retreating to gather his strength. But even as he stepped back, the first seeds of doubt had taken root.
So it's also interesting too, right? Like of the three gods, Meccan, Yaldabaoth, and the Scarlet, two of them are alive and Meccan's dead. At least as far as we know, right? Like Meccan had died, and its last kind of act was to imbue its prophet with, you know, its gifts. And then they built the great city and their technology and etc. But the Scarlet's still around and the Yaldabaoth's still around, and it's interesting that the Scarlet was able to, I guess, overpower and then not able to destroy, but had to imprison Yaldabaoth, you know? Yeah, how can you not consider being chosen of a god at all? I mean, true. Especially with the vision that they were given of, you know, essentially being their prophet. And I mean, it sounds like what ended up happening is that eventually Adytum did give in. And that's how Adytum got the ability to raise the dead. You know? And so like the vision that Adytum had there of being the at the head of a Holocaust army and the Clavigars at her side, etc., really did come true. Just didn't happen in the way she expected, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. That it's interesting. I still kind of hold to the idea that I think this sentient AI, Xenophon or whatever his name is going to somehow end up becoming Meccan in present time. I feel like that's what's going to end up happening with the story. I think all three gods are going to end up being released in the present, and then maybe we'll see what happens with the Black Star in a future story arc. I don't know. We'll see.
By February 7th, 2042, the Black Adytum Initiative had departed from the burial site of Uruk and were moving towards the next location indicated by Adytum from her memories, identified as being within a prefecture in China. During the journey, she submitted to regular interviews conducted by Foundation personnel regarding her memories. She recalls that the Deva had used their magic on Uruk, making her into one of the massive earth-moving slaves. They took her as a youth, subjecting her to their alchemies and spells, bracing her body with cuttings from their great tree beasts. She grew to a huge size, even among her fellows, and soon they put her to work. She grabbed rocks and tossed them away, excavating more land to build upon, but she was in pain constantly from the cuttings inside her, growing and malforming her. Adytum could not take her back to what she was, not without killing her, but she could remove the pain. She let Uruk
that would be a
lift
blessing
her
in
to
and
her
of
lips,
itself, right?
sawing off a weight of Adytum's flesh and letting her dine on it. She says that Uruk was in constant agony for as long as she could remember, accompanying every motion and movement, and then it was simply gone. Uruk looked at her like she was a god, and trusted her totally after that. Adytum had taken advantage of her, however.
I mean, yeah, right? Like, just having a chronic, just existing being pain. You know what I'm saying? Just existence being nothing but pain all the time. And then this person comes along and takes it away. I mean, it would be hard to not, then put all your trust and belief into that individual.
As Adytum was only so big, and their numbers began to swell. They needed space, land for their people to till, for their beasts to graze, to grow their families. The villages simply had the misfortune to be near them. It began with the outlying farming villages of the old masters, who still hated them. Adytum told Uruk that they needed to be sure that they would not be enslaved again, and to take their lands for their own was just cause. The need did not go away, however, and simply expanded. Even as the villages stopped being those of the old masters, even as they were simply people trying to live like them. She told Uruk to take them, and she believed her. Adytum believed herself. They grew fat on the blood Uruk spilled in Adytum's name, and Adytum let herself be corrupted.
Yeah.
That was the betrayal she sees now, as the Nalka entrusted her to seal away the old beast, and instead she let it pervert her.
Yep.
It filled her heart with a lust for power, stole her mind from her, and caused the loss of her people. When you sup on the flesh of a god, your hunger is never sated. It just grows and grows. On February 19th, 052 ordered increased security for the Black Adytum Initiative following the revelations regarding the Grand Karsus relationship with the Old Beast. Additional security personnel were assigned, along with a permanent aerial escort. While stopped for their midday meal, Xenophon approaches Ioun, who is playing some kind of game with a group of children. She outstretches her hand and pulls it back as a girl does the same, trying to match her movements. At some point, the girl's movement falters and she groans, causing all of the children to collapse into laughter. They then notice Xenophon and quiet down, but do not move away, as Ioun tells it to come and sit. It does so, and she begins playing with the girl again. Xenophon asks how the game is played, and she explains that there is a small, bone-carved trinket between her and the girl, Yuo. If the charm is there, she moves and touches it with an open palm, and if not, with a closed fist. Then Yuo takes her turn. The next turn, Ioun plucks the trinket away with her hand motion, and Yuo's closed fist meets the ground. They rapidly exchange turns in rapid concentration until after a minute or so, Ioun's movement falters and her open palm meets empty air, causing Yuo to cheer. Xenophon states that you win by the other person making a mistake, and when Ioun asks if it would like to play, it replies that it cannot make mistakes, so it would not be of much enjoyment for them.
Wouldn't be fair.
Yuo scampers off to tell her parents, and Xenophon comments that she allowed the girl to win. Ioun replies that she did, because they are young, and these small victories embolden them. They learn that they can do anything, and it makes them more daring and adventurous. They learn their real limits by themselves. She also tells it to call the girl by her name, as names have importance. Xenophon says that it tends to address people by their rank or title, but as she is a child, it will call her by name. Ioun asks if it was created to do so, but it explains that that's actually a learned behavior, developed over time as an arbitrary preference. The remaining children grow bolder in their inspections of Xenophon, touching its metal shell, and Ioun says that they're trying to tell where the seams of its armor is. Xenophon replies that it's not wearing armor, and one of the boys asks if it's its skin. Xenophon begins to explain that it's a hard latticed shell of carbon fiber over a titanium insert, but the boy's eyebrows furrow, so it just says
no
that
idea
yes,
what he's talking
it
about.
is its skin. Ioun snorts and tells the children to go back to their parents. After they depart, Ioun's posture visibly slumps and she sighs. Xenophon comments that they don't seem as afraid of it anymore, and she says that it intrigues them. They struggle to understand broad ideas, but they see it and they are curious.
I mean, yeah, exactly. Kids are curious. They're going to want to know what it is. They've got this machine human thing running around their camp talking with their leader. They're going to want to, after they realize it's not going to hurt them or anyone they care about, they're going to be curious and want to inspect it and learn, what it is and maybe talk to it, or etc. I know I would. I feel like most kids probably would.
She supposes that seeing the two of them speaking calmed their fears. Xenophon asks if she's all right, and after a pause she says no, asking if it's apparent. Xenophon says it's not to them, but it simply notices more. Ioun explains that she's just afraid, as the revelations from Uruk have disturbed her. She sees the children, and all she can think about are the children from Adytum, and how she failed them. She had a duty to hold back the Devourer's influence, so her people could live in peace. Instead, she became its prophet, a tyrant and a slave to the divine, again. Xenophon replies that they have experience in such matters, and the influence of a god is pervasive and powerful.
Yep.
It pauses for a moment before revealing that the Foundation has lost good people to such influences before. Ioun purses her lips and says that still, she was the only person who could do it, and she failed. She doesn't understand why they are like this, impossibly powerful, and yet they pull humans into their machinations. Xenophon quotes Lord Acton in response. absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yeah.
Which,
Well, and I mean, it's also like I feel like if you think from the perspective of a god, right? Like, if technically you're immortal, you know, I mean, what else are you gonna do? You know, and I feel again, it's been kind of a thing that's happened in a lot of SCP universe stories, etc., where it just seems that something about humanity and, you know, humanity worship, believing in something gives, you know, more power. So I feel like it also in general is just, you know, the want to be more powerful. Even as a god, there are probably other beings, entities that are stronger. I mean, just from the fact that there's three gods that have been like locked in this potentially eternal struggle with each other, they would probably want to have, you know, as much power as they can to defeat the other gods, their rivals. And so having human worshippers would empower them more. It could just be that simple.
Ayun finds to be wise. The two are silent for a few minutes before Xenophon asks her if she wanted to hold back to the old beast. She says that no, she did not, and she remembers in the first days telling them and herself that she would depart as soon as she was able. For the first time in her life, her future was unbound, and she wanted to walk the earth and find herself at the ends of it. She never got to, although Xenophon says that they've been doing quite a bit of walking lately, so perhaps this is her chance. Ayun only sighs heavily in response, and Xenophon twitches, raising its hand slightly and then lowering it again. When asked what that was, it just says that it was nothing. Ayun says that she doesn't think she's ever been without expectation. Her earliest memory is being pulled from the pens as soon as she was able to lift a pick, being put to work for the old masters. She was expected to slave all day if she wanted to earn her bread and water, just the same as all the others. She cannot
It feels so kind of strange, right? Like, I mean, from what we know of the Davite society, right? Like, obviously, they used humans as slaves. But it's like, they say their belief system is that, you know, humanity, I guess, through whatever their bound is, they start as slaves, but they can eventually become Davites themselves. And so it's like, yeah, you know, as slaves, they would be expected to do things and work for them, et cetera, but it seems like they're overly mistreating them. You know what I'm saying? Right? Like, I don't know. I don't know how I'm trying, like, I don't really know what I'm trying to say other than it just seems strange, kind of contradictory that, like, from what we know of their, like, they could obviously be lying, right? They could have just been telling the Foundation straight up lies that, you know, there isn't necessarily a pathway for humanity to become, you know, Davites and their soul get, you know, changed to Davites and, you know, live in the ethereal plane and become immortal and join their song or whatever. You know, that could have just been straight up lies to, you know, kind of walk around the fact that they're enslaving humans. But I mean, if that is true, right, then it's like, yeah, you're overly aggressively like beating and torturing people that will eventually become your kin. You know what I'm saying? Like, it seems strange. It just seems strange to me. I don't know. You would, like, again, like, obviously, yeah, they would probably be expected to do things, and if they don't, they would be punished, but you would think that they would still, you know, care for them enough to, you know, give them a proper amount of food and make sure they're healthy enough to work and stuff like that. I don't know.
find the words to capture the misery of vast slave pens, of the priestesses burning their herbs to keep them pliable and weak, of the slave masters cutting off the fingers of anyone who fell behind on their labor. Then she uncovered the old beast, and tasted divinity. She was expected to lead her people on this crusade, but she was just a child. The records do not say that, but she was only 15 or 16. Xenophon is surprised that she did it, and she just points towards Yuo and her brothers, who are now surrounding their mother and picking at the hem of her dress. She says she did it for them. She has seen generations of her people grow and die, innocent.
And I mean, like, I feel like it's either one way or the other. I would have done the same thing. If I were a 15-year-old boy or girl in a situation where I'm enslaved and basically just about beaten to death every day to, you know, only have my small reward of ration of bread and water, right? Like, and then somehow I uncover a god and I have a chance to either A, become this god's prophet and, you know, rise up and free my people and fight against these people who've enslaved us, and or take this god's power for myself and do the same thing, you know, like, of course I'm going to do that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like that's kind of like a no-brainer. You know what I mean? I'm not going to just sit there and be like, oh, damn, you know, I guess I'm just going to go back to, you know, getting whipped every day. I know, like, what?
Children turning into jaded souls, bearing innocent children again. The children do not have to worry about what their people did with her at the helm. They are clean, and that's why she did it. With every passing of the torch, they grow ever closer to shaking off the yoke of their past. Xenophon comments that they all do so except for her, and she shrugs, saying that someone has to suffer for it. Xenophon states that humans have an evolutionary incentive to sacrifice themselves for their children, to ensure the tribe survives, so she cannot help it. Her genes did not offer her any other option. She squints at it, asking why it's here. Xenophon replies that it's here to aid in research, but she shakes her head, poking its chest, asking why it walked to her. Did its master instruct it to? It says that no, it felt it would be prudent to speak with her. Adytum remarks that it chose, and yet its instructions are in tune with its choice. Either they are both masters of their fate, or neither of them are. Xenophon goes silent, until it says that they need to begin moving soon. Adytum says that it didn't mean to upset it, and it replies that she could not upset it if she tried.
Can't be upset.
Xenophon later asks a young child what being Sarkic means to him, and he replies that his father is dead, dying before the child's first hunt. His mother told him that he would not see him anymore, but Yeva told him that since they all ate his meat, he is still with them. When his hunt comes, his father will join him, and he was happy when he was told that. It made him feel not so alone. In another Delta Zero update, they report that Director Hussein has been successfully redirected from the Caspian Sea site, and Delta Zero personnel have supported his decision to focus on Kabul as the primary subject of Project Locust. Project personnel have been securing archaeological evidence related to Black Star, or Black Moon entities en route. Items of interest are being surveilled by Delta Zero personnel for reacquisition if necessary. The Black Adytum initiative is also en route to their next location of interest, with an ETA of 8 to 12 days. The embedded agent reports a falling out between Adytum and Yeva, although the nature and extent of the schism is unclear. The agent also reports a general decline in Adytum's mental state as a result of recent revelations, with increased surveillance ordered. Plan Sheer Glacier has been pre-cleared in event of catastrophic project failure.
Interesting.
Lastly, Xenophon is still functioning within expected margins. We're then provided another excerpt from the Truths of Adytum, which reads, Lo, Gaze upon me, you noble, you blood-stained. You who have fought and spilt blood on the stones of this nameless city. I see you from this pulpit, vast and assembled. I see what you have lost in snatching your freedom from the hated foe. The canals still flow with the blood of our victory, but it has come at a cost. Those of you that are wounded, stricken, my Karsus will attend to you, make you whole once more, greater than you were before. Your sacrifices have not been in vain. I see the great and honored dead, stacked high in pyres outside the gates of the city. Bodies to be burned as the old masters burned their dead. No. No, we will not let those who gave their last measure of devotion become smoke in the sky. There is no great tree for them to return to. There is no god to bow at the feet of and be rewarded by. There is only us. We will consume their flesh, as I consumed the old beasts, as my clavigars consumed mine, becoming one whole. We will carry them with us, always, their memories in our hearts, as their spirits return in our children. I see the great world weariness in your eyes. I wish only that I could reach out and allay it. We have done the unthinkable, freed ourselves from the bondage our mothers and fathers died under, and yet we stand on the cusp of something even greater and more momentous. We spurn the blind faith of the old masters and the Eastern machines. We live for ourselves, our future unbound. For the first time on this world, a people are truly free, not just from the bondage of men, but from the machinations of gods.
Are they?
I see the future and the fires below. I see a strong and proud people, children living blessedly ignorant to the unthinkable suffering of their parents. The past offers us nothing but pain. We are not ruled by our past. We are not defined by our past. We leave it behind and march boldly into tomorrow. I see the spreading tendrils of the devourer far below. Many of you have come to me, asking if it too is not bound by the old masters as we were bound, if it does not share in our suffering. I come to you having seen it and spoken to it face to face. It is not human. It hungers not for freedom, but for control. To free it is to doom ourselves. It must be held, and I must be the one to do it. I look down, and I see my vestments. I did not choose this life for myself. I was born on this path, to be birthed a slave, to stumble across a fell god, to lead you. My say in it is as pointless as commanding the sun not to rise. But it is the duty you have entrusted me with, and it is the duty I will fulfill, as faithful to you as you are to me. I see a great city before me, nameless and clean of sin. I do not know what the old masters named it, if indeed they gave it a name at all. But names have power. This city is as free from its past as we are. We will make it in our image. Adytum, the perfect city, the one that exists in our hearts. But this is not Adytum, yet. It can only be made so through our own blood and sweat. We must work tirelessly to build this new experiment. For if it fails, if we sink back to the same sins of our captors, let its name be blackened by sin. Sometime later, when the All
right, before we get too much further ahead of that, it's... I do find it interesting, right, that, like... Is it just ego? or hubris or whatever you want to call it that Adytum felt like they were the only one that could like directly consume from Yaldabaoth and tried to like keep it, you know, under wraps. You know what I'm saying? Right? Like, why wouldn't I don't know. I feel like if I almost feel like from the beginning that she just wanted this power for herself to begin with. You know what I'm saying? Because like she could have taken the people that she made as Clavigars, and instead of having them feed from her, they could have joined in as well and had been equals in power, and say, and you know, whatever, in as leaders in their society. And then the burden of keeping Yaldabaoth buried and chained, whatever, would have been split amongst them. So to me, it also almost feels like from the beginning, Adytum just wanted this power for themselves. And that's also part of the initial corruption, right? I feel like even just in taking it and keeping it for themselves, the like seed of corruption was already there to begin with. I don't know. It just seems, like I said, either egotistical or hubris or whatever you want to call it. Might have just been selfishness or greed as well, or just the want to have that power to themselves. But it just seems strange. I don't know. Anyway, continue.
Convoy has made camp for the night. Xenophon weaves through the camp as the Sarkites eat, converse, and play music. They nod respectfully to Xenophon as it passes, and several shift aside to make room around their fire.
Interesting.
But it continues on.
Interesting that they're showing him kind of respect and almost kind of seeing him as part of their community now.
Until it reaches Yeva. It asks if it may sit, and she pauses for a moment before shrugging and saying that it can if it keeps silent. Xenophon sits between two Sarkites as Yeva continues to read from old texts. She reads that Adytum saw the strength of the flesh, the power and dominance in the old beast, the flesh that could be used to free themselves from their bondage. The flesh is perfection in absolution, needing no supplement, as the old masters sought, or replacement, as the Eastern machines searched for. And yet they see that Adytum saw weakness in the flesh too. When war came to Adytum, the scarred bodies they wore so proudly, the curse of their freedom, could not make war. Too many of them sick and injured, too many made weak by clinging to the flesh they were given. And here Adytum made a decision.
Starting to sound like, you know, that whole Adeptus Mechanicus, you know? I saw the weakness of my flesh, yada yada. That whole thing is like playing in my mind now.
That Adytum's needs overtook those of her people, that some must suffer for others to survive. Yeva asks how they reconcile this, that the flesh is perfect, but weak. She shakes her head and hikes up her dress, showing the mass of snakes extending from her left thigh, along with a similar mass of snakes that has now replaced her other leg from the knee down. She says that the flesh is perfect because it is alive. It grows and changes, evolves and overcomes. Stress makes metal shear and snap, but given time, the flesh will adapt to stress and strengthen from it. They are born in weakness, as their babes are weak and unable to walk, soft and pathetic and helpless, but they grow hard and strong and hardy with time. So why rob themselves of the chance to rid themselves of the last limitations of their flesh? Adytum saw it, and so they survived the wars while all others were obliterated. The past holds the answers for them. Xenophon then asks her if they are limitations, as she said that flesh's strength was in its evolutionary nature. It doesn't fully understand why she feels such things are limitations if they are products of her adaptations. The other Sarkites shift uncomfortably around the fire, and Yeva replies that it doesn't understand because it has never inhabited flesh. It is not a person, it is a thing, and it takes solace in its limitation. It is made as it always will be, and will not grow past what it was made for. It cannot conceive of desire, of wishing for something it cannot have. Xenophon is silent, and she stares at him, breathing heavily as she continues. She says that she was born crippled, working twice as hard to crawl, 4 times as hard to learn to walk. She grew up seeing her fellows run, play, dance, all while she could only sit in her lap. She promises it that flesh can be a prison, but they reach into the past and draw out truths for their futures. Xenophon says that it's sorry to hear that, but it felt that she was referring to more than physical disabilities. She shrugs and replies that humanity extends beyond the flesh. Their attitude is limiting, and they must conquer it. They lay back and accept that they will grow old and die. Xenophon says that many people believe death to be an inherent part of life, but she counters by asking if despondency is part of joy. Xenophon thinks for a moment before saying that it thinks they give each other meaning.
Right.
One needs
have
to
one
know
without the other.
unhappiness to value happiness.
Exactly.
Yeva says that the limitations of humanity are present even in its false soul. It is a desperate rationalization made by people not as fortunate as they are, those who lacked the tools to forge their own flesh. But they are not them. They can be greater, and they can overcome. Adytum then steps in to say they can if they wish to. The group turns to look at her, seeing that Adytum is staring at Yeva, whose face tenses. She says that Yeva is so adamant that they must leave these things behind, as they limit them. But she asks if a bird is not limited by its wings, preventing it from grasping nuts or holding a sword. The wings make the bird what it is, as their limitations define them. They can try to burn the sky, or they can embrace living underneath it. Yeva counters that the wings offer the bird something in turn, but this weakness only brings them softness and death. Adytum, speaking gently, explains that death is an opportunity to live a life knowing it will reach an end, knowing your loved ones will consume you, carry you with them, let your spirit be reborn in a new body. The knowledge that you have loved your parents 1,000 lifetimes over, and will love them 1,000 more. To reach out to someone and know that your time is limited, and you want to spend it with them. An opportunity that not all of them have. The group sits in silence for a moment, until Yeva abruptly bows her head slightly and turns on her heel, departing for her tent. Adytum watches her go, a strange look on her face, and she whispers something as the Sarkites begin to disperse. Xenophon asks her if she's alright, and she simply says no, asking it to leave her alone.
Okay.
Xenophon watches her leave towards her tent, but after several seconds, it follows her in. Inside, the fire is burning low, and Adytum is kneeling in front of it. When she looks up, it's clear that she's been crying, and she hurriedly wipes her cheeks on the sleeves of her robes. It tells her that it felt compelled to ignore her order, even though it didn't think that it could ignore an order. It kneels next to her as she says that she has failed Yeva. Xenophon says that it listened to her sermon and feels that she taught her the doctrine well. Adytum replies that she knows their prayers, sermons, and texts by heart, more familiar with Adytum's words than even she is sometimes. She taught her all of that, ever since she was a girl. Yeva could not play with the other children, So Ayun sat her on her lap under the shade of the trees, teaching her everything she knew. The flesh, holy death, why they consume, so they can be reborn. She would curl up into her lap and play with the ends of her hair while she read from memory to her. Xenophon says that she sounds like she was a sweet child, and Ayun says that she is. Her heart sang when she saw her leading her first prayer, singing and swaying, just the way she was taught. She taught Yeva so much, and yet she feels as though she understood none of it. She sees the words and not the message.
Not the
and
meaning
Ayun
behind
doesn't
the words.
understand how she can stand up and preach now that their humanity is something to be overcome. Xenophon remarks that Ayun did as well, and thinks that Yeva is looking to the past for answers.
Yeah. It sounds like Yeva is going more along with the Ayun of the past kind of a situation, you know? And Ayun seeing what had happened in the past and, you know, her experiences of her present life and now seeing the memories of her past life and how they're conflicting. She's questioning, you know, her beliefs in this doctrine, essentially. Whereas Yeva is believing in them more firmly, especially after, you know, having her legs replaced and healed now.
Ayun wonders why, as she has been her anchor, and asks why she feels the need to turn to fractured memories from Ayun's past. Xenophon replies that it's because they offer something that Ayun does not: reassurance and direction.
Right.
She called Yeva her legacy, but she will never get a chance to lead their people. She has trained her excellently for a role that she will never be called on for. She does not know what her purpose is, and the memories speak to her. They reassure her that her place is to dominate, to control, and she flocks to the easy answers, as humans often do. Ayun snorts
Pretty
at
wise.
this, and Xenophon says that it is not without flaw, as it is curious. Ayun says that curiosity is a virtue, not a flaw, but it replies that it is when paired with the inability to indulge your curiosity. It is programmed to want to learn everything about her and her people that it can, but it is not a person. It will never have a complete understanding of why they appreciate music, what food tastes like, or what makes her chase after Yeva's approval. Ayun stares in confusion at it, saying that it is a person. Xenophon says that it isn't. It is an artificial intelligence construct with digital thoughts racing across a silicon mind the size of her fingernail. She pats its chassis and says that it is not human, but it thinks the same
It's
as
a
her
person,
and
yeah.
feels the same as her. Xenophon insists that it does not, but Ayun asks why it followed her into the tent after
Right.
she ordered it not to.
Right.
The horse she rides is a person to her, along with the cows they milk and the falcons they keep. She knows their oddities and enjoyments and dislikes. They are no more human than it is, but they are her people, her Nalka, along with Xenophon. It pauses for a moment and says that, still, it will never understand why they do some things, like what drives them to eat their people. She says that she loves them, and other cultures do not experience this love. When she loves, it is all-consuming, and she wants them to feel her and taste her. In turn, she hungers for them, to understand them wholly, to become one with them, to feel their flesh as they feel hers. She asks what greater show of love there is than to desire every piece of their essence. She presses a hand against Xenophon's chest and says that here grows warm and heavy, hungry like it could burst from your chest at any moment, run free from the weight of your body. it flows up to your head, into your eyes. Everything fades and you can only see them. They become momentarily the whole of your world, and you exist only in relation to them. They bring you closer to the divine. She brings her hand down toward Xenophon's stomach, and she says that you know in the deepest part of you that if you were freed from your flesh, your souls would intertwine. Bound as you are, however, all you can do is hunger to have them totally, in every way, to give yourself up for them even as they do the same for you. She pulls her hand away, and Xenophon is quiet for several seconds before saying that it sounds unstoppable. It asks if she's experienced it, and she says that she has, with Lovitar, the last of her Clavigars. She stares into the fire again, and admits that she is afraid of what he will say. His love has been replaced by disgust, just as with the others. Disgust at her for failing, disgust at how she has changed, that she will find herself standing alone before the horrible truth. Yeva has always been with her, but now she's not sure. Xenophon approaches and places a hand gently on her shoulder, saying that it does not know Lovitar, but she will not be alone. She cocks her head for a second before smiling slightly and thanks him.
Sounds like something a human would say, you know? I mean, definitely feels like Xenophon is developing. I don't know if it's emotions. He might not be able to experience emotions the same way we do, but he's definitely, growing attached and having care for these people, if something were to happen to them, it would be, believable that he would be upset over it.
Xenophon asks a 43-year-old musician what being Sarkic means to him as he skins a groundhog. He replies that his drum is made from skin, although he doesn't know whose, as it was his grandfather's drum, and his grandfather's before him. The skin is tanned and taut, and now and again it rips, so he goes out, kills something, and turns its skin to leather to repair the drum. Then he sits in the shade of a tree and sews it back together. It then joins him for the singing of the next night. That's what being Sarkic means to him.
Interesting.
On March 13th, the Black Adytum Initiative arrived at the site marked by Ayun, a wide, grassy plain near a calm lake. There is a building sitting near the shoreside, overlooking the waters, stark white, with large pillars supporting an overhead dome. The only sound is that of the waves lightly lapping at the shore. Xenophon notes that this building does not exist on any maps or satellite imagery of this location, and Ayun begins walking towards it as she says that she built this place. It was hidden from others, but he wanted her to find it again, and to find him again. They approach the steps of the building, which is close enough to the water that a few centimeters pool at the base of the white steps. Ayun begins ascending the steps, which are clearly mottled white with an imperfect surface, and Zhang realizes that the whole building is hewn out of bone. They reach the top of the steps, finding the doors fused together into one solid mass, with no visible seam. They are completely blank, but Ayun says that she spent days carving her memories into them, their memories. Xenophon explains that the sea would have eroded them away, and Ayun reaches out to press 2 fingers against the surface. The door splits down the middle instantly, crumbling into pieces, and the pieces into dust. The interior of the building is dark, and Xenophon begins to enter before Yeva, moving remarkably quickly, blocks it. She states that she will not let this abomination again access a place before they do, and she trusts it no more than it trusts her. Xenophon cocks his
Interesting.
head and says that it does trust her, as she is talented, intelligent, and has proven herself a capable shepherd of her people. This confuses Yeva, who blinks a few times before hurriedly turning and entering the interior of the mausoleum alongside Adytum.
Kind of strange that she would all of a sudden, like, I guess, grow enough balls to, like, do that too at this joint. And I mean, like, what difference would it really make at this point, right? They've already been to 3 different temples, right? Like, what does it matter if he doesn't go first this time to make sure everything's safe? You know what I'm saying? Like, it just seems kind of strange. It could just be that she's just trying to, like, you know, I don't know. Maybe she's trying to, like, put on a show for the other Sarkites, trying to, you know, put on a display of, like, you know, I know what's best for our people and blah blah blah, and you can't be trusted, and trying to, like, set herself up as a leader, I guess. I don't know if she's having some kind of, because there obviously is, like, a growing distance between Adytum and Yeva now. So it's like, is she trying to make a display to get others, like, follow behind her, kind of a situation? I don't know.
Xenophon and Zhang enter afterwards, and Xenophon activates its lamps, showing the group standing in a shallow pool of blood.
Yummy.
There is no body present. Instead, just a pedestal on top of which rests a softly glowing human heart. It pulses slowly, covered by glass, and Adytum approaches it, smiling, greeting it as her.
What is this is Vecna's phylactery here. You know, are we getting into D&D here again?
Her love. She lifts the glass top and gently picks up the heart, bringing it to her lips before hesitating. She casts a look over to Yeva, who's watching coolly, and Adytum hands the heart to her. Yeva's eyes widen, and she begins to protest, but Adytum tells her to do it, so she lifts it to her lips and bites into it. A small gasp escapes her lips before she begins tearing into it, devouring piece after piece until there is only one small chunk left. She offers it to Adytum, who drops it down her throat. Suddenly, the entire group drops into the pool of blood, and Xenophon's cameras deactivate. When they reactivate, the 4 of them are standing on the beach, now bereft of any mausoleum. It is twilight, the sun dropping below the horizon of the water and turning the sky orange. There is a young man sitting cross-legged on the beach, watching the water, and Adytum approaches him. He rises from where he is sitting, turning to face her, revealed to be a handsome youth with sharp features and olive skin. Rich, complex tattoos creep out from underneath the collar and sleeves of his robes, and before he can speak, Adytum interrupts him. She says that before he speaks and releases his anger, telling her what she deserves to be told, she understands her mistakes.
That's what I was thinking too.
She has seen what she became. She could live 10 lives and not atone, and she is sorry. There is silence for a moment, before Luvatar steps forward and embraces her, saying that she could not anger him if she tried. There are no words for how much he has missed her, and although she looks different now, brighter, she is still the one he loves. She's confused that he's not angry with her, but he says that she made a mistake, as they all do. He was angry,
only human.
They all were, but he knew that wasn't her, and she would come back eventually. He has waited for a long time, and his anger faded, but his love did not.
So I'm wondering now, right, like, from what we've known, and the fact that it seems like Adytum eventually was corrupted by Aldabaoth, is this a situation where, like, her needing to take their bones and go to Black Adytum and bury the bones there as a means of reshackling Yaldabaoth to push the corruption back. You know what I'm saying? Is that what this is going to end up being about? Huh.
She asks why she remembers this place, and he explains that it's because she's been here before, in another life. They were escaping Adytum's destruction, bathed in soot, charred and blackened by flames, but the traitor was pursuing them, dogged armies chasing them across the plateau. They would chase them and kill them, ending the dream they conceived together, slaughtering the children they raised together, unless someone stayed behind to pull their pursuers away. He says that Nadak was necessary, Uruk was necessary, Sa'arn was necessary, but he was not, and so he sits here, waiting to be killed. At that moment, a steady rumbling begins to fill the air, growing louder and closer, increasing to deafening volume. The ground shakes with thousands of footfalls as monstrous entities rush the beach, superficially resembling humans, but misshapen, distended, and with yellowing skin and milky white eyes sloughing off their bodies. They rapidly encircle the group, and Luvatar slowly rises to his feet, brushing the sand off his robes, and stating that now his time approaches. Zhang remarks that he's seen these things before, possibly at one of the Locust dig sites.
Interesting.
Ayun asks Luvatar if he's leaving, and he replies that he bound himself here, trapped in this memory, and lingered well beyond his time because he wanted to lay eyes on her one last time, to know that she was not the same as he left her. He says that she knows how this ended, though, but she doesn't. Her memory was gone, and she spoke with the others, assuring them that she would bury them in Adytum, and she realized what she had done. She reaches out and grips his shoulder with white knuckles and wide eyes, her lip trembling, and says that she succumbed to the Devourer's temptations with whispered promises of power. She let the traitor with his black moon burn Adytum to the ground while they fled. Luvatar freezes, then...
It's interesting that she calls it a traitor. So... is Ayun also the Black Star? Is there like a multiple personality thing here? Or is it, you know... I don't know. I don't know, man. I want to know who this Black Star is and what's going on with it. I want more.
Slowly turns back to Ayun with a strange, confused look.
But I mean, it seems like they're calling it a traitor, so like he was one of the Nulkins, I guess, at one point in time. Maybe it was one of the Clavigars. I don't know.
On his face. He says that no, that is not what happened. She steps forward, caressing his cheek, and tells him to show her, but he says that seeing it again will only hurt her more. She insists, telling him that she needs to know, and he's silent for a moment before stepping forward, pressing his forehead to hers and holding it there. The scene shifts, and they're now in a long, dark, underground corridor. The walls look hand-hewn from dark stone, and in thousands of little alcoves, skulls and bones are neatly stacked. Sconces packed with fat burn slowly, casting a sickly pale glow over the corridor. Distantly, a deep, bone-shaking thrumming can be heard, interspersed with human conversation. Suddenly, from behind, a copy of Luvatar appears, several years younger but the same person, now dressed in hooded hide robes, decorated with beads and bone-carved charms. He is making his way through the corridor towards the noises, clearly ill at ease, and the older Luvatar speaks to the group as they follow him. He says that he had noticed it from the beginning, that she retreated from Nadak, from Uruk, from Sa'arn, and eventually from him. All her time spent in the underbelly of Adytum, communing with gods, peering into fire for answers that wouldn't come. At the beginning, he could descend in and fetch her, bring her back to the light, but that was the start. Soon, Adytum had grown beyond the walls of the city, becoming a fledgling nation, and each of them had their own duties. He had to shepherd the Karsus as her absences stretched from days to weeks to months, but then the months threatened to become years.
Jeez.
He hates this place, as horrible things happened in these crypts, but he descended to bring her out. Yeva remarks that she had to do this duty, as the beast had to be kept at bay, and Luvatar smiles, stating that is what she told them. The group draws closer to the noises as the tunnel tightens to a space barely wide and tall enough for Xenophon to stand in. Luvatar says that there is a wretched, quiet desperation in these tunnels, and Xenophon agrees, comparing it to an animal in a cage. Luvatar's eyes narrow as he appraises Xenophon for the first time, asking what it is. Xenophon replies that it doesn't know, but Ioun just says that he is hers. Luvatar nods and turns back to the scene.
That's kind of interesting. That Ioun would say that he is hers.
The memory has moved forward. Past Luvatar is now standing before a great set of stone doors, infinitely detailed and inscribed with all sorts of calligraphy and complex scenes etched into the dark stone. Luvatar says that whenever he came to fetch her, he would find her here, performing her work, sealed in this great stone vault, locked away with such a dangerous font of power. He always felt bad, and wished the door to open so that he could aid her in her struggles and ease some of the burden from the shoulders he loved so, but it was always sealed, except for once. The door hangs slightly ajar as a pool of blood leaks out of the gap, and past Luvatar does a double take before quietly approaching the doorway. The thrumming and whispering are now almost clearly audible, and he peers inside. Inside is a high chamber, almost entirely dark save for a single well-maintained fire in the center of the floor. The cracked and carbonized remains of bones litter the base of the fire, and the sweet-smelling smoke hangs in the air. The walls of the chamber are flesh-like tendrils, wrapping over and over onto themselves until they form a solid, pink, pulsating mass. All across the walls, knives are stabbed into the flesh, blood flowing freely from the wounds and collecting in channels cut into the floor, flowing down to the fire. Somewhere, a great, occluded heart beats, and fresh blood pours from my 100 wounds. The thrumming repeats, and it is now clearly a howl of pain from something far older than the city it is buried underneath. The old beast, Yaldabaoth, the mangled god, speaks in gasps and whispers, saying, "Please," over and over. Past Ioun tells it to be quiet as he strides into view, exiting the shadows of the corners. He is dressed in the same etched and decorated hide robes as Luvatar, albeit even more grand and ornate. Even without the distinctive ritual tattoos peeking out from his collar and sleeves, and the faded scar across his face, his sharp features and gray eyes immediately betray his identity. The old beast calls out for him to free it, but he just snarls and tells it to be silent. It continues to beg to let it go home to see its brothers and sisters, but Ioun says no, not while it is needed. The old beast asks why, as he hurts it, like the builders hurt it. Past Ioun pauses for a second, before pressing a knife into the flesh wall, causing the room to howl in pain again, shaking the bones of all those assembled. He says that the hour approaches, and its flesh is needed now more than ever. The old beast exclaims that he took so much, but Ioun shakes his head, stating that it's not enough. It states that if he frees it, it will give him as much flesh as he needs, but Ioun just says that it would kill him where he stands if he frees it, as that is all it knows. It is its nature as a god, and power is its birthright. It had never had to claw it from a dying grip. It simply dominates and destroys. The room trembles in protest, and the old beast shouts that it was enslaved just as he was. They have both known bondage under the whip of the builders, and it wants freedom just as he does. It hates the builders too, and it is weak now, but it knows things. It helps him and his people, and it heals them. Its brothers and sisters are gone. The mechanism, the scarlet, the black moon, and it has nothing left for it at home. Ioun doesn't speak, so the beast eagerly continues, exclaiming that it could aid him, and it feels him building something grand above it, something new. It tires of the struggles of the divine, and it could be a part of his new path, part of his Nalka. Ioun snarls at this and drives the knife deep into the flesh, eliciting another howl. He states that it is nothing like them, as it has no soul. It is a fell god, trapped here only by the grace of fate. He takes a shaking breath, calming himself before speaking again. He begins talking about the parable of the scorpion and the frog, where both creatures are sitting at the bank of a flooding river, sure to drown. The scorpion asks the frog to carry him across, and the frog hesitates, until the scorpion says that if he was to sting the frog while they crossed together, both of them would surely die. The frog agrees to this, and begins to carry the scorpion across.
In its nature.
When they are halfway across the river, the scorpion reaches down and stings the frog, causing them both to begin drowning. Dying, the frog asks why the scorpion chose to doom them both, and he has no answer other than, "It is my nature."
In my nature. I'm going to pause right there before it gets further into this. So, I mean, obviously, very interesting reveal, which is kind of where I figured some of this might be going. You know, the idea, and it very well could just be, you know, Yaldabaoth saying whatever it feels that it needs to in order to elicit sympathy and compassion to be freed, and very well could just be a situation where once freed, it would kill all the people around and would have no real care for any of that, etc. But it could also be telling the truth. It could be, you know, an innocent being that was used and abused by the Scarlet and the others and was imprisoned here. I feel like it's not necessarily the case, right? Because, I mean, why would it just be imprisoned here, right? I feel like there would be more to the story, right? And I feel like it's more of it just, again, trying to say whatever it can to elicit, you know, to appeal to Ioun's humanity to be freed. But it's also interesting that, ironically, you know, Ioun is essentially no better than the Davites, keeping this thing, you know, imprisoned here and using its power for itself, consuming more of it and more of it. And, you know, the more it consumes, the more it wants. It's basically like a drug to Ioun, you know? The more it consumes, the more it needs. And then, you know, the more Ioun sees into the future and what's going to happen, the more power it needs, so the more it consumes, you know, kind of a situation. So I don't know. I'm curious if we're going to learn more about, you know, Is Yaldabaoth telling the truth that it would help? That it's, it's essentially innocent and it was abused like they were and it would help them? Or if it's just, like I said, lying to try to gain sympathy. I wonder if we're going to like learn the truth behind that one way or the other at some point in the story. Anyway, let's continue.
The old beast's voice trembles in pain, and it replies that nature is not set, but grows and changes with the flesh. Ayun says that that is true for people, but not for things like it. It is created with intention, with purpose, and cannot grow beyond it any more than the scorpion can choose not to sting. The beast insists that it has never hurt them, but Ayun just says that it is a threat by its very design. The beast then begs for him to kill it, letting its soul cross into whatever lies beyond. But Ayun reaches forward and pries loose the chunk of flesh from the wall that he has cut away. It is pink, raw, and dripping with blood and loose arteries and veins. The gaping wound in the wall pours with blood and fluid, and he says no, not while he still needs it and its power. He raises the meat to his lips, biting into it with sharpened teeth. The blood gushes over his lips and spills down his chin, staining his robes, and he chews, leaning his head back and letting out a soft moan. The old beast exclaims that this is not how it showed him, as the flesh is for giving, not taking. Ayun, however, says that he sees tomorrow, and he stands on the cusp of greatness and immortality. He will lead his people as a prophet for all time, making sure he will always be there to guide them. The beast asks what he is willing to take to see this dream made manifest, and Ayun simply answers with everything.
So that also is another point that's interesting too, right? Is it sounds like it's not necessarily Yaldabaoth corrupting Ayun, but Ayun just being power hungry, the need and want for greater power to protect, her people and society, essentially, it sounds like drove Ayun insane, just about. That sounds like where this is going. So that also is very interesting. It kind of earlier, in the story, it made it sound like it was just, the time spent eventually, the corruption of Yaldabaoth took over Ayun and she gave in and was no longer necessarily able to shackle it and, kept feeding, Yaldabaoth wanted her to potentially kept feeding on it to gain more power so it could, take control and blah, blah, blah. But that doesn't seem to be the case. It seems to be, that old adage of absolute power corrupts absolutely, which is, they even said earlier in this.
The beast is silent for some time, and when it speaks again, its voice is faint and weak. It says that he has changed, and when he uncovered it, he was clear-eyed and true, a liberator and believer. Ayun replies that he was weak, and he ruled by the weakness of his humanity. Soon he will excise it, as he can see it in his future, with every bite of its flesh. He can feel his power grow, as already he can raise Halkos from the dead, and soon he will conquer holy death. He leans his head back and steps back, panting, blood dripping from his mouth and staining his hands, and he says that he will become eternal. A small, soft thump is heard as past Luvatar drops the torch he was holding while peering through the door. Ayun spins around, finding only the empty doorway, as Luvatar quickly dodged to the side, nestling into an alcove filled with bones. Ayun approaches, peering around and finding no one, before eventually retreating back into the chamber and sealing the huge stone doors shut again. After a few minutes,
well, and right, that's what I was thinking earlier, right? I feel like that was the situation from the beginning, was that Adytum all along wanted this power for themselves. And even though they kind of, I don't know if you maybe were deluded or whatever, they tried to essentially, I think, convince themselves that, you know, they were the only one that could keep this creature at bay. And that also could have just been a story from the beginning. Adytum could have been this power hungry being, you know, once it first initially consumed the flesh and got a taste for this power, from then on could have been like, you know, I want more and I need more, etc. And could have just created this story of, you know, I'm this is my burden. This is my, you know, sacrifice to make. I'm the keeper of this great beast, and I will, you know, continue to do so in the name of, you know, our collective city and humanity, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And it could have all just been a ploy to begin with. I mean, and especially, I don't know. You would think though, right? Like, she would know this would happen, being able to see the future. So, again, it just seems like, yeah, they might have been this way from the beginning.
Luvatar rises to his feet, quickly moving back up the chamber the way he came, tossing the odd sidelong glance back at the chamber doors as he runs away. Present Luvatar speaks softly, explaining that he is ashamed, but he ran as he was terrified. He knew that she had grown trouble, but this was so much farther than he knew. She always told them that the old beast was a hateful monster, kept at bay only by her work, but he knew what he saw in the crypts. He did not see a fell god. He saw a trapped, suffering animal, mangled in its god trap. Yeva then steps forward, raising an accusing finger at Luvatar and saying that she made a mistake, as we all do, and her mind was warped. Adytum, however, says that it wasn't, and tells them to look at the hard eyes of the memory of Adytum. They are gray, crystal clear, and shrewd, and Xenophon says that those are her eyes. Nothing was possessing or controlling her, and Adytum says that the old beast wasn't the devourer. She was
the devourer.
And she is. Luvatar says that he told the other Clavigars, as they had been growing worried from the sermons of rejecting humanity in favor of the divine
good so far,
and becoming their own gods. Now she was trying to extricate her own humanity from herself, and if she cut it out and killed it, there would be nothing left of their Adytum. The Adytum who saved them, cradled them in his lap, fed them his flesh, the Adytum he loved. They could not allow it to happen, could not allow him to destroy himself. They met and they schemed, gathering their loyalists as the ritual drew close, meeting away from the prying eyes of his Karsus. On the anointed night, when the funeral fires burned low and the bodies were dumped in the catacombs for him, Nadak captured his attention. The scene shifts to the exterior of Adytum, the group on a high temple balcony overlooking several streets in the night. As they watch, a hooded figure slips out of one of the entrances to the catacombs, carrying something in their arms wrapped in cloth. The hood slips, revealing Luvatar's worried face for a moment. He says that he slipped her severed humanity away before she could take the knife to it. As they watch, Luvatar slips under the shadow of the walls of Adytum, vanishing in the darkness. Shifting to the wall.
So I wonder if this humanity is what Adytum is in the present. If he was somehow able to take a piece of her away, and that piece is what was left of her humanity for safekeeping, and then all these years later is reborn into what is present Adytum. That would be interesting.
A small party is visible in the distance, covered wagons and horses and hundreds of small figures massing in near-perfect darkness. Slowly they begin to move, and Luvatar explains that they ran. Xenophon turns, looking back into Adytum, seeing the dead of the Holocaust stalking the streets, rotting, hulking beasts stomping down the avenues in tune with the drum beats and omnipresent, haunting singing. The only lights in the city come from Ayun's central temple. Xenophon says that they were not running from the Black Star's destruction of Adytum. And the scene shifts again, back to the clearing by the beach. The Holocaust surrounds the group, grunting and screeching mindlessly before there's a commotion at the far end of the gap as the crowd parts. A figure approaches on a dark horse, its 4 eyes gouged out, and the memory of Ayun sits atop the stallion, dressed in hide robes with carved bone armor loosely draped on top of them. His eyes are sharp, angry, but clear and gray. Luvatar asks him what he has done, and he replies that he has done all that had to be done, and his struggle is rewarded by betrayal. Luvatar counters that he betrayed them, but Ayun says that Adytum was his dream, and he saw fit to realize it the only way they could. Luvatar calls him a poor thing, saying that he does not realize what he has wrought. Adytum is gone, blackened from Ayun's sin. Their paradise was built from misery, and their prosperity was cut from the flesh of a suffering animal. He lied to them, and lied to him. Ayun just says that it was for his own good, but Luvatar's fists tighten, saying that he made him a promise in that quarry, that their path would be decided together. Ayun saw what the old masters did to him, and he didn't want to control him as they did, so that's why he loved him. Ayun tells him that that's enough, and asks where it is. Luvatar says that it's gone, as Nadak and the others have taken to the wind with it. Luvatar loved Ayun because he was human, perfect in his imperfections, and he will not let him kill that part of him. Ayun's lip curls, and he says that he always knew Nadak and him were jealous of his station, his power, his adoration. He sees his game, seeking to undermine his authority, seeking to rule in his stead. Luvatar tells him that he's lost his mind, as he never wanted anything more than to be by his side. Ayun just continues, saying that he will find them and bring them all back to Adytum. This project is too great to be felled by weak-willed deserters. The ritual must be completed, and Luvatar's only hope now is to tell him where they have gone, to spare himself and them undue suffering. Luvatar asks how he can justify this, as he made so many promises to them, to all the Nalka, of a new way of life, not built off domination and slavery. And then he grows his empire, grows his own power from a suffering animal that wants its freedom just as they wanted theirs. He has become what they all revile, and what they fought against.
Yep.
Devourer. Yaldabaoth. Ayun yells that he is nothing like the old masters, as he built Adytum into something great. Luvatar counters that Adytum is more than a city. It is an idea of perfection and equity. Adytum will not happen when he carves flesh from an unwilling cow to support his own power. Nadak and Sa'arn will make their Adytum somewhere else, somewhere new, while Ayun will return to Black Adytum, surrounded by a reminder of his failure.
That's what I was thinking too. Like, one is about the power of the like self taking power and being selfish, you know, for yourself kind of a situation, you know. So like, yeah, they're both kind of playing out in this nature.
Ayun says that he tires of this as he unhooks a bone-carved dagger from his belt and dismounts from his steed. Luvatar just continues, however, saying that he knew him better than anyone and knew just how terrified of failure he was, of the Nalka failing once he died. He doesn't fault him, he just wishes he had let him help him. Despite it all, he still loves him, as humanity cannot be excised so simply. Sooner or later, the parts of him he loved will return, and he will realize what he has done. He will cross the earth to make amends, and Luvatar looks forward to that. Ayun tells his Holocaust to take him, but Luvatar says that he will be waiting for him, calling him Little Thing. Ayun snarls and yells that he told him not to call him that as he lunges forward with his knife. He drives the knife directly into Luvatar's stomach, causing him to double over and cough up blood. The memory of Ayun pants heavily for a few seconds before his features soften and he begins to despair. His eyes widen in panic as he kneels, cradling Luvatar's head, and the real Ayun rushes from the other side, cradling the other side of his head. Luvatar weakly apologizes for provoking him, saying that it isn't his fault, while past Ayun presses both of his hands to Luvatar's chest, asking why he can't heal him. Luvatar says that he cut that part out of him, and that power is with the seed now. Past Ayun exclaims in a panic, and present Ayun tells him not to leave her, as she cannot be alone.
Right.
Luvatar tells her that she will never be alone, as he'll always be with her. Perhaps in a different shape, or a different form, but he loves her too much to ever leave her. Past Ayun stares down at Luvatar's dying face with wide, dead eyes, and the real Ayun's eyes start to well with tears as racking sobs overtake her. She says that she didn't mean for this to happen, as she was scared that she would fail, that he would not love her if she decided she wanted something besides the purpose allotted to her. So she decided to fulfill it as best she could, no matter the cost, as she didn't want to disappoint him. Luvatar replies that he has known her as a slave, a prophet, a king, and a monster. He has never stopped loving her, and cannot stop loving her any more than he can stop breathing air. He coughs, spraying blood across both Ayun's faces, and the gray eyes of past Ayun are welling with tears. Luvatar asks them if they remember what they planned for when they left Adytum behind, and they both reply that they do, although they never got to. He tells past Ayun to leave his body here, by the sea, and to return to Adytum, letting Nadak and the others go. When his mind returns to him, he knows that he'll come back, and then he can eat his flesh so they can be together again. He then reaches up and grasps the back of the present Ayun's hair, pulling her close. He whispers something in her ear, and Ayun kisses his cheek. She asks him if he's scared, and he says that he's not, and she mustn't fear death, because you must die if you wish to be reborn. He smiles for the final time, his eyelids fluttering shut, and the last breath exits his body. The howling, animalistic scream of pain that both Ayuns release simultaneously carries on, washing over the group until the vision falls apart. When Xenophon's cameras reactivate, they are again in the pool of blood inside the vault, but now the panels in the dome have given way, letting rays of bright sunlight into the once dark vault. Ayun is kneeling before the altar as Xenophon approaches, placing a hand on her shoulder and asking how she feels. She
probably like shit after watching that, man. I mean, like, for real. Like, that would be a hell of a thing to reconcile with, right? Like coming to the realization that you were kind of the root of the evil essentially to begin with, that your selfishness and your want for power eventually, made you were no better than the people that enslaved you. Essentially, you did the same thing to this, god creature that seems, apparently from the story, seems to have been genuine in that it was enslaved and abused as well. If they'd freed it, would have been able to help them, wanted to fight back against the builders, aka the Davites and the Scarlet, etc. So instead of doing so, Ayun just, consumed it, kept it for its, Ayun kept it for himself, seeing the future, allowing the vision of Adytum and her people being destroyed to corrupt her, and would then continue to consume more and more flesh to gain more and more power to try to combat that, only for it to become a prophetic vision, and that in doing so would lead to their destruction. But then not only that, right? It seems that this present day Ayun was the humanity that was left from past Ayun, and they were somehow able to take it and, abscond with it. And then also seeing, how your actions in the past killed what sounds like, her lover, right? It sounded like Ayun and Luvatar had more of a close relationship than that she did with the other Clavigars. It sounds like they were lovers at one point in time, or at least had, more of a, they had at least a closer relationship if they weren't lovers, you know what I'm saying? So like, to then come to see the realization that you would murdered them, through your own selfishness and want for power or whatever, like, that's a lot to have to reconcile with, especially with everything that they've already been through. Like, geez.
Looks up, tears drying on her cheeks as she gently smiles.
So, I mean, it's like, it's a hell of a question to ask, Xenophon, like, how do you feel after watching that? How do you think they're going to feel? You know what I'm saying?
And says that she feels like herself again. We're then provided the final chapter from the record of Ayun, which reads, "And in the last days of the Nalka, the streets of Black Adytum were gripped with a great and terrible fear. Ayun's most loyal witches, the 4 Clavigars, met by the light of the candle in a crypt, far from the prying eyes of the Witch King's marching holocaust. And there they spoke of failure, of madness. The knowledgeable Nadak, keeper of histories, urged the others that the Witch King's sin was unforgivable, that he must be cut away from Adytum. The strong Uruk, tall as 10 men, agreed. The scaled Sa'arn, silent as a snake, agreed. But it was the beautiful Luvatar, striking as the sun, who argued. Nadak, remember your blindness. Uruk, remember your pain. Sa'arn, remember your cruelty. Remember as I remember my abuse in that blessed quarry. It was not our fellow slaves who elevated us, freed us from our flesh. It was our brother, and for this he deserves death?" And the Clavigars were silenced, for it was true. The Witch King had fed them his holy flesh and crafted them their forms. But
I mean, though, knowing the truth about it, though, again, it seems like if Ayun really wanted them to kind of be equals, they would have shared in that whole process. I feel like it might have been a situation really where, like, it was probably several things. Ayun wanting to keep the power for themselves, but also if Ayun let them meet with Yaldabaoth, they probably would have wanted to free it, being that it was abused just like them, and she would no longer have that source of power. So I don't know, man. Like, yeah, Ayun might have, elevated them and freed them and etc. But it all seems like there was a lot more selfish reasons than, what's the word I'm looking for? It just seems like there were definitely more selfish intentions than essentially trying to elevate their peers and, to free them.
Even despite
it wasn't just for good intentions, essentially.
This, Luvatar knew that his beloved, untethered from his humanity, would bring the end of the Nalka. Nadak, ever incising, demanded an alternative, and Luvatar offered. Let us take our believers and leave. Walk away from this place and its sins and the bodies buried beneath it. Ayun, my love, has turned this grave into a city and back once more, but his heart still endures. One day his mind will return to him, and we will return to the city of our birth and embrace him. We're also given another translation taken from the set of human bones from the archive of Nadak, which reads, "The days before the ritual were like a weight had come to rest on the city. The eating of the flesh, already at a low, ceased entirely. You gave the order for all dead, whether from battle or sickness or time, to be carted down to the catacombs where you now resided. No one was to enter, not your most loyal Karsus, not Nadak, not even I. All through the day and night the quakes grew in intensity, rattling the stones of our buildings and sending the animals into a frenzy. One morning I awoke to the unmistakable stench of blood. I ventured out from my chambers, coming to one of the wells in the street that funneled air down to the catacombs below. The scent of blood, thick and rich and heavy, wafted from the hole. You were bleeding the bodies, I understood. We worked quickly and discreetly, sneaking supplies out from storehouses and hiding them in the farms outside the city walls. I spoke to those Karsus, the children we raised together, who were still loyal to me. The other Clavigars did the same. We prepared our escape even as Adytum grew quiet. And then the anointed night came. I knew it, somehow. I passed Nadak in the street and gave him the sign. He nodded imperceptibly and went off to make the final arrangements. I knew what my task would be. Come nightfall, I slipped into the catacombs. I had the best memory of their layout, invaluable after, in your paranoia, you ordered all maps to be destroyed. I trekked through the tunnels, hiding in alcoves and vaults stacked with the bones of old friends. The floor was pooled with an inch of blood, and I tread quietly until I arrived at that vault. The door was sealed, and I heard you inside, exchanging sharp words, orders, meek, desperate pleas from the old beast, screaming, howling, praying from you to something I could not grasp, gasping, and then crying, the crying of a baby. And then enraged shouting as you were called away by one of my Karsus, telling you Nadak required your presence urgently. I waited for your footsteps to fade, and then I slipped through those stone doors. If the beast noticed me, it said nothing. The blood was thick here, pooling into the channels of the floor, flowing down to an altar that held a child, a baby, swaddled in clothes. A girl, to my surprise. You you opened your eyes, and I saw the crisp gray I had come to love, and then to fear. The same scar across your face, and a bone-hilt knife resting on the altar next to you. You gripped my finger and burbled with laughter at my face. I could not remember the last time I had heard you laugh. I gathered you in my arms and ran, shushing you every time you cried as we slipped out of the catacombs, out of Adytum. I write this now sitting on the beach, waiting for you to find me and end me. Nadak knows to return and fetch my bones. He will bring them with you as you escape to somewhere free. This is a record of our history together. Once, many years ago, in a quarry, you gave me the greatest gift you could muster: freedom from my past. Stealing you away, I give you the same gift now. Your future is porcelain bones, clean, unwritten. In the present, Xenophon messages the individual and says that Ioun didn't deserve this, as she was forced into impossible circumstances and led her people the best she could. She grew to fit her container, as humans are good at that. One would think you would deserve some solace after all that. The individual replies that we don't get what we deserve, we get what we get, which Xenophon believes to be unfair. It then asks them who they are and why they're so interested in this file, and the individual wishes they could tell it, but they just have to finish up here before they'll tell it everything. Xenophon calls this irrational trust in absence of assurance, but says that it trusts them, as it's starting to remember now. It says there are so many memories, and the individual replies that trying to erase the past rarely works. Thus ends Chapter 4, where we see that Ioun had somehow extricated his own humanity from himself into the form of a baby girl, and this young child was whisked away by the Clavigars in the hopes that one day Ioun will return to her normal state of mind and rebuild the Nalkan Empire. Obviously, this is going to be a very delicate situation for the Foundation, eager to learn as much as they can about the ancient Nalka and Adytum without kickstarting another resurgence in a past empire.
Too late.
Xenophon is perhaps getting more deeply involved than the Foundation intended as well,
Right.
and things are progressing steadily towards a razor edge as the path of the bone reaches the home stretch.
All right. All right, well, there it was. That was part 4 of SCP-001 Black Adytum. Links will be down below in the description, as always, to the original video without my commentary and reaction, and to the Exploring Series channel. Do me a favor, if you enjoyed this video, please go over to his channel. Be sure to give this video a like, and check out the content on his channel. If you haven't hit that sub button, consider doing so, as he makes a lot of great content for the SCP universe and others. I mean, lots of story reveal in this one. It's clear that Ioun, seemingly, I feel like from the beginning, wanted to keep this power to themselves, saw it as... I wonder when Ioun was able to start seeing the future, right? Like, was that something that Ioun gained from initially consuming the flesh of this creature, right? Was it a situation where, like, they consumed, Ioun consumed the flesh of Yaldabaoth, gained the power that they did, and then used it to drive the Davites out, and then once that power was there, she started to see the future. She started, past Ioun started to see the future, and so having the visions of Adytum be destroyed, started wanting to probably consume more of the flesh to try to get more answers, and then in doing so also gained more power, etc, etc, etc. Because the other issue is, right, like, if Ayun really again wanted to have this kind of society of humanity where everyone was equal, she would have told people the truth about Yaldabaoth and would have let everyone, I guess, make their own decision about whether to free it or consume it, and everyone gain this power equally kind of a situation. But clearly over time, the want for power corrupted and consumed Ayun, and Ayun became no better than the Davites and the people that enslaved them. Probably didn't want to corrupt others at the start, so they got corrupted themselves. Yeah, I don't know. But it seems like from what we learned in this reveal from the story that Yaldabaoth is an innocent creature. Seems to, I don't know if the Scarlet and Meccan and the Black Moon are its brothers and sisters, or if it has other brothers and sisters that are like it. And because it was said that the Scarlet imprisoned Yaldabaoth there. And so, I guess the question would be, why would the Scarlet do that? If this was Yaldabaoth considered a threat to it? I don't know. I mean, from what we know of other stories, it would seem that all of them were at war with each other, but it seems like I don't know. It just was Yaldabaoth just some kind of animal deity that was hunted by the others and was just trying to defend itself and got caught up in some kind of battle between all of them? Or is there more to the overall story of that? Also, there's no telling the god was actually good, to be fair. Right, exactly. I mean, it could just be a situation where Yaldabaoth really had no interest in humanity and genuinely probably would have wanted to help them, considering that it also was enslaved by and abused by the Scarlet / the Davites, so they would have had a common enemy or whatever. But it also it still could just be a situation where it's just pleading because it's trapped there and it has no other options, and who knows if it really is good or bad, because it's a god, and whatever it is probably beyond what our really understanding is. And honestly, it this part of the story kind of really reminds me a lot of Bloodborne and the whole Orphan of Kos and the fishing village, and the body of Kos washing up, and the hunters in Bergenworth abusing it and trying to use it for their own experiments and yada yada. It feels very Lovecraftian and very Bloodborne-ish, so I'm all about it. And then again, the reveal of what we got with Ayun killing their closest Clavigar, possibly lover situation, and it ending with Ayun saying that they're themselves again. What does that mean? Is past Ayun now present Ayun's body? Or the memory is that what's going to happen moving forward now with the memories all being intact? Is present Ayun and old Ayun one again? I don't know. I guess we'll find out. But I mean, there's 2 episodes left, so I'm curious as to what else we're gonna get with this. Are we going to actually see? Are they going to take us to Adytum and Yaldabaoth? We're actually going to see the god? Are they going to free it? Or are they not? Are we going to find out whether Yaldabaoth really is innocent or not? What's going to happen with this Black Star stuff and the Abominant? Are we going to get more of that? Who is this now individual that Xenophon is talking to? Is it the administrator / the Black Star? I don't know. But it seems like there's a lot more story left to wrap up for just 2 episodes. So I feel like I don't know if the author has intentions of if this story's finished or if they still have, you know, a whole other arc. It seems like there would be, right? Because we have the origins of the Mechanites, the origins of Davites, and the origins of the Nalkans / Sarkics. It would seem like there would be at least one more arc that would follow the origins of the Black Star and the Foundation. So it would seem like there is going to be more still with this red tape story, but I don't know. So, but I guess yeah, that's gonna be it for this one. I'm very curious to see where the next 2 episodes are gonna go. So I guess we'll find out in part 5 and 6. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. If you are still watching here at the very end, I know these videos are very long, so I greatly appreciate it if you're watching it all the way through here to the end. If you enjoyed this video of mine with my commentary and reaction, consider leaving a like and a sub, as it helps me and the channel grow, and it lets the YouTube algorithm gods know that you enjoy this kind of content and you want to see some more. If you'd like to join us when I do these reactions live, as I am right now with my YouTube members, we'd love to have you guys come in and join our discussions that we have, you know, before, during, and after the videos. There is a join button underneath the video, as well as a link in the description, the YouTube membership benefits and tiers that I offer. So if you want to take a look at those and see if that would have any interest for you, and you want to take your sport to the next level, that's where you can do that. But regardless, thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you're having yourselves a wonderful day. We'll see you on the next one.